Hey, Dr. Califf, nice to see you.
Great to see you.
From afar. I'm told that I was out at another committee hearing, but I'm told that Senator Sanders asked if you support negotiation, and you agreed. Now, do you think that the FDA has a role in this negotiation? Let me first ask you this.
No. We were a bit short on time, so I was trying to compress my answers. I mean, I have a published record saying I think negotiation is a good idea, but that's not the role of the FDA. So that's the answer.
That's fine. I also want to associate myself with Senator Cassidy's remarks about the work we're doing in antimicrobial resistance, and I think I'll know you'll be very aware of that. And how do we come up with ways for these necessary antibiotics to somehow have a business plan which works? So just to mention that as well.
I really appreciate your help with that. And I remember in 2016 sitting there with all of the relevant agencies, and you're trying to keep track of the microbial underpinnings on a global basis because we're all connected. And it's a great place for big data if you love the science, but we have got to figure out how to get a handle on this.
You had mentioned in a conversation we had prior to this that I had raised the issue, and I want to follow up on it just to set the stage. We know that on complex generics, if I remember my term of art correct, that, for example, the EpiPen, that you could change whether or not you turn the device to the left or to the right, and that would give a lease of life of exclusivity upon the product. So Dr. Gottlieb had suggested, your predecessor, to allow equivalency between, okay, you don't have to turn it left or right. It can still be considered the same product, but with alternative instructions. You had mentioned great idea, but that FDA needed tools to allow that to be implemented. We didn't follow up in the conversation. Is there more you want to say to that?
I would just say, it's going to take a little work for me to get completely up to date on all the current tools that are at our disposal. But your point is so well taken. I think you and I agree that what we want to reward is innovation and creating new things that make a difference in people's health. People should do well if they do that. But having legal tricks that extend patents and reduce competitiveness, I just don't think that's a good idea under any circumstance.
Let me ask, how long would it be until you think you could come back to this committee with recommendations as to how we can address those legal tricks to give FDA the ability to offset them, if you will?
Well, I hesitate to give a specific time, but it should be short. I mean, I'm not ignorant on the issue, and we had a good list in 2016, but I think a number of those things on the list have already been taken care of, like the buying a generic company to prevent the competition from occurring. I think these things you all have already helped with, so I want to make sure I've got the updated list. It should be fairly, very quick, I would think.
Next, thank you. I look forward to that. Next, we had spoken again offline about the accelerated pathway and, how the Biogen drug for Alzheimer's obviously addressing a need which is devastating, but there's a lot of concerns about efficacy, safety, and cost. And you had mentioned using big data in order to have a quicker answer on drugs such as this. I'd like you to elaborate on that, please.
Sure. Well, we have essentially 300 million plus Americans with electronic health records now. Our health data is being used all the time in clinical practice. A lot of my career has been on the issue of how do we use that data, organize it, curate it, make it useful for research. It sometimes startles people when I say the data is good enough to use in clinical practice, as you all know, but not good enough for research. And people say, wait a minute, how can that be that it's good enough for me but not good enough to draw a conclusion? I think we're well down the road now in having a functional system, but I also want to assure people I'm not talking about willy-nilly analysis of data. I'm talking about well-planned studies, frequently the use of randomization. And if we look at the UK during the pandemic, that's what they did. They organized as a country. They took on the big questions, and they've answered a lot of questions very succinctly with the advantage they don't have to spend a ton of money collecting what's already in the electronic health record.
Let me ask you, do you need different rules that we have to give you, or can you do that with existing authority?
I think the FDA has adequate authority, but I think the system, because this takes many players, CMS has to be involved, the private health sector has to be involved. And I think the most important thing is to develop a system that gives Americans trust that their data can be used, not for someone else necessarily, but for their own benefit. I mean, if I had a heart attack today, I would feel a lot better if I knew how all the other people like me had fared with the different treatments. And so it's in my interest to share data, but we got to develop, I think we do have work to do to develop a system that Americans will trust to allow this to happen.
I look forward to your further thoughts how to develop that system, and I thank you for your vision. I yield.
Thank you. Senator Hassan.